And as everyone, I hope everyone is doing well today. Thank you very much for joining us. I feel like this has become a community, sort of a family meeting, kinship, fellowship, if you may, that we do every month. Thank you to a number of you who put this in your calendar on a month-to-month basis. We won't be here without you. We won't be here if you don't show up. We do our best to, of course, continue to do so, but we're just really grateful and very encouraged that you continue to prioritize this. And our numbers are growing by the day. Many of you would be excited to know that we're now going into the double hundreds, and a few people get to watch after the fact as well. So it's really exciting. We're glad that we're able to bring something together at this time that is very much timely. The conversations we have when we get together here is one thing. Getting to know where people are coming from, getting to see the questions that are posed as well. But more important, I think just as important, I should say, is also the follow-ups that happen even after now. I know there are one or two people who, I guess, seeing the questions that a few people pose, continue those conversations as well. There are questions that come our way even outside of the webinar. So again, a very, very big thank you to all of you. Our numbers are increasing. It's very, very exciting. And yeah, I just always like to open with gratitude. As is typical, we would, before we get started, so we're going to do things a bit differently today. But just before we get started, I would like to know where you're joining us from. Where are you joining in from today? How are you doing? How is Tuesday morning on the 15th of April treating you? Is there something from the weekend that you've brought into the week? Is there something, excitement, call it even trepidation, concerns that you may be coming into this space with? And of course, questions too. It's not too early to start posing those. Whatever it is you're comfortable sharing with us. I see some people have started to share already in terms of where they're joining us from. Awesome, awesome. See what I said, we're kinship network, and it's shaping up very much to be that. I see Jackie Dales is joining in, has joined us from TN Dinaga. Please forgive me, Mohawk territory. Jackie, thank you very much for joining us. Jessica Leslie is here from a sunny and warm afternoon in Halifax, Nova Scotia. And Christopher is joining from Victoria. Poonam is joining from Burnaby. Nice and sunny. Awesome. Yeah. A lot of us are benefiting from really good weather today. Heidi is also joining from Halifax, Immigrant Settlement, Nova Scotia. That's wonderful. Marnouche is joining from Quitlam, and then Valentine is joining from Victoria as well. Yeah, so please keep it coming, keep it coming. We want to know where you're joining us from. We want to know, how are you feeling today? What are you bringing into this space? Victoria Lemons is joining from Surrey. Yeah, we're excited to have you here as well. Carrie from Victoria on the territory of the Songhees and Esquimalt nations. Yay, so we're neighbors really. Joy Harris is joining from Anishinaabe and Atawandaron peoples, Kitchener, otherwise known as Kitchener, Waterloo. It's not sunny today, but very warm. Oh, we're sending you all the sunshine and the gold dust that we have surrounding us in BC. And Taylor, uh, uh, thankful to be calling in today from the traditional and ancestral and unceded homelands of the Coquitlam, Tswotud, Musqueam, Squamish, Katsi, Kekiat, and the chosen home of the North Fraser Métis Association, colloquially known as Port Moody BC. Ron is joining from Burnaby. We're just going to take some time because we know people are still grabbing their coffee, grabbing their cup of water. As I mentioned, well, our numbers are growing. Given what the current climate is, it gets really easy to wonder how many of us are going on this journey. And it's been really, really refreshing to see the kind of dedicated interest, the kind of dedicated engagement that we've had here. We're hoping that we can continue this for the long haul. Of course, we were only able to do that with with access to resource, and a crucial, a key part. When I talk about resource, I use that word loosely here. A key part of that is just your showing up, your being here with us. We're going to take about 2 more minutes to continue with that. And then what I'm going to do today, we're going to do things slightly differently, because as much as we're doing this in a webinar format, I also would like for us to engage and to interact. I think technology being what it is, of course, when we do this in person, there's so much that we can glean and garner, but I'm mindful that there is wisdom in the room that we may not always get the chance to tap into. So we're going to try to build today from that lens. And so I am going to very shortly here, I guess maybe we'll give it another minute. And then we just have 3 questions to get us started today. As you all know, our topic for today is accessibility as a human right. And I'll be speaking to some of what that means to us, some of the areas that we've been working on with regard to this very shortly. But we wanted to start by hearing you. Again, using the word hearing loosely here. We want to start by engaging you, by hearing your voice in writing. And we hope that a number of you would take just a quick minute or two to respond to the poll. So again, welcome to each and every one of you to our Accessibility as a Human Right webinar, a continuation of our A-Ready Plus Lens webinar series. We're honored to gather with you to explore the vital role accessibility plays in advancing justice, equity, and human rights. Today's conversation invites us to think deeply on how systems can exclude and continue to marginalize and perpetuate cycles that invariably disenfranchise, franchise particular groups by not paying attention to, or by choosing to not see, in many cases, the real lived realities of a number of us who have visible or invisible need for more accessibility. Again, that could be physical, that could be digital, and these are some of the things that we'll be going through throughout our conversation today. So accessibility, as we know, is not a favor or a checklist. It's not just something we're trying to run through. And that's why we thought we'll take some time today before we get into the meat of the matter to talk about, to hear from you on how exactly this impacts you. It's not just a favor that we're doing to people who have real potent needs or a checklist that we're trying to run through. It is a fundamental human right that affects every aspect of life, from housing to employment to education, healthcare, civic engagement, and beyond. And looking at who we have in the room as well, I say we have a fair bit of representation from people working in the settlement sector. We have some private sector representation as well, and community partners and leaders we've got in the room who, of course, come face to face with these issues on a day-to-day basis. So I think this conversation is timely, and from what we've heard as well, we know that that's something that does resonate with you. Before we continue, I would like to acknowledge that The Inclusion Project itself is a guest on the territories of the Lekwungen-speaking peoples of the Songhees and Esquimalt nations, otherwise known as Victoria and Vancouver Island. We're grateful for the opportunity to continue to build meaningful relationships and hold vital conversations on these lands. As we acknowledge the land we're on, we also acknowledge that accessibility, whether physical, cultural, digital, is a right and not a privilege. Access is shaped by colonization, policy, infrastructure, and design. And today we are here to challenge and reimagine those systems together. Very shortly, I'll be speaking to our partner, our special partner who's going on this journey with us today, and you see the very tangible way they're contributing to this webinar. But whether it's Mosaic, who I will be talking about later on, or our previous partner, Vantage Point, on our last webinar on accountability within systems and structures, we continue to, all of this is made possible through the collaboration, the partnership, the support that we enjoy from our partners, from our allies who are working hard, I should say, in different areas of specialization and focus to continue to ensure that the communities that we're part of reflect values that we hold dear. Of course, I would also like to acknowledge our partner, our Coast Capital Savings, who have been on this journey with us through the years, even before we started this webinar series in this format. This webinar in particular is made possible through the valuable support and commitment of Coast Capital Savings. Coast Capital, as some of you may know, is Canada's largest membership-based credit union that's headquartered in BC. Coast Capital's contribution through the years has been instrumental in helping community organizations like us to continue to do the kind of meaningful work that we aspire to do. We remain grateful for the immense support and partnership that we've enjoyed from them. So, okay, to go now to the poll that I mentioned, I know a number of people are still going to join us, but I guess we can get right into it now. So you may see it, you should see it on your screen now. We're going to take about 2 minutes, 2 to 3 minutes to respond to this poll. If you have it in front of you, please go ahead and get started. If you don't, for whatever reason, please put it in the chat and we'll see how we can tweak that technology. So the question here for those who, and we apologize, we're talking about accessibility, and it's also recognizing that there are some limitations within technology as we have it currently that may make it challenging for some people to participate. But the question that we have in front of us, first of all, to get started is to see, what does accessibility mean to you? And we're not just talking about a definition. I'm sure if we passed an invisible mic across the room, around the room, we would all have some, theoretical definition that, yeah, I'm sure would apply in some context of what accessibility means to us. But we're talking about accessibility in terms of how it shows up in our daily lives, how it shows up in our work and in our communities. I see some questions, some people have responded to that already. And then the second question is accessibility a priority within your workplace or community? Awesome. I'm seeing the responses come in already. And then the third question is, if yes, how do you intend to further it within your workplace or community? Because I mean, as we all know, we know that the destination there isn't so much a thing as, I guess, destination in this. This is a journey that we've got to continue on to maintain our momentum over time so that we don't lose the change as different threats arise across different parts of the world, and particularly within our neighborhoods these days. And Hugo, welcome, welcome. We're just doing a quick poll. We're very, very excited. Thank you so much for joining us. We're very excited to have you here. And then so the second part of the third question is, if it's not a priority within your workplace or community, what are the barriers you face? I think I can end the poll now, and then I'll just go through the responses real quick. Hugo, so we're just going through a few polls. We just wanted to hear from people in the room what accessibility means to them. Okay, so we have enough. I'm just going to read through a few really quickly. I'm saying something like accessibility means not having to ask to be treated differently, but for systems to have into account the needs of diverse individuals. Thank you very much for that. Belonging, truly an ever-evolving practice of creating space for true inclusion and belonging, opportunity to participate. Inclusion not only in the built environment, but attitudinal, including persons with disabilities in the design of projects. Thank you. Equity, enabling all individuals to access the same things, building supports, learning opportunities. Accessibility to me is my employer being flexible. Okay, full participation, barrier-free communities. We've got such rich responses here. I can't get through all of them. And then on the second question, we've got about 92% of people who say, yes, it is a priority. That's really good. That's heartwarming. That's really good to hear that. Of course, and then we have about 12% there who say no, it's not a priority as yet. And we realize, of course, that as much as it might look like 12 is a smaller number, at the end of the day, these are real individuals. These are people who are impacted. There are people who are part of that number and metrics and whose experiences are not captured because accessibility is not yet a priority for us. And then the third question, if yes, how do you intend to further accessibility within your workplace or community? If no, what are the barriers you face? Someone says, yes, my hope as an academic advisor is to ensure that my approach caters to all kinds of people. Built environment policies, procedures, facilitate the uncomfortable conversations, continually asking those who work here and use our services for feedback and suggestions, include people with needs in all the steps and cycles of our processes. Okay. Further greater awareness of individuality needs, advertise supports available, and build more, consult with various individuals to prioritize those with lived experience. Developing policies, fostering attitudes, changing system. Yes, I still face barriers. The most significant is budgetary restraints. Making improvements requires resources, and I have to submit requests for approval. Yes, continue to monitor and address community needs. This is wonderful. I work with the government, and for whatever reason, it's compulsory to return to work, which is a challenge for me. I totally hear that. We're working every day to make things more accessible for our students. We face many hurdles, specifically ableist attitudes across the institution and faculty members who do not understand. We have so many responses here. This is encouraging. What this says to me is, apart from, again, y'all showing up, it really does say something here about the timeliness of this conversation, the necessity of it. And I think what better person to help us delve more into that than our speaker today. And so I have this pleasure and honor of welcoming Hugo Vasquez. to the webinar today. I'm sure I'm not going to do much justice to the vast experience that you bring. So I'm sure participants will hear more directly from you the breadth and depth of that experience. But I'm going to try to just read just a little bit from your bio. Hugo is a human rights lawyer certified in Mexico with a master's in Asia Pacific Studies at the Australian National University. Within Mosaic, he currently is the Director of Family and Settlement Programs and previously collaborated as Senior Manager of Community Engagement, Legal Advocacy, and Migrant Worker Programs. Working as a Mexican diplomat in Vancouver, Hugo was responsible for overviewing the health and well-being of more than 6,000 migrant workers who come to BC each year as the coordinator of the Seasonal Agricultural Workers Program. In a previous capacity, he led a team that designed and implemented the National Disability Rights Program. In accordance with the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, as part of the National Human Rights Commission. Hugo, I know we try to compress that in about 30 seconds. Again, didn't do justice, but welcome. Please, before we get into the meat of the matter, if you want to add anything that to your introduction, or if there's something you want to share with us today before we get right into the conversation.
No, thank you, Ruth, and everyone for having me here. And glad to share my experience. But I think the most important thing is to join efforts with everyone that is here today, because we all have different things to contribute. And this is what makes us stronger.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much, Ugo. When we have these kind of conversations, and as we can tell from the poll that we've just had, people have some really good grounded understanding of what the subject matter is. But at the same time, just so we find some common language and we have shared understanding around this, in your opinion, what is accessibility as a human right, and why is it important to reframe accessibility in this way?
Well, I'm very proud as a former Mexican diplomat to say that the Convention for the Rights of Human Rights for Persons with Disabilities was a proposal of Mexico to the world in Durham, South Africa, and it's probably one of the most ratified documents in UN history. And there's a significant paradigm change where we stop seeing accessibility as just being physically accessible and to being accessible in every way, socially, emotionally. And I would say my definition is just to think inside and recognize that accessibility is not a ramp. It's not having a ramp to enable people to come into your community. It's a way of mind, right? And that has a way of thinking, and we have to be accessible both in our hearts and in our minds. And this means the inclusion of persons with disabilities in any realm of our lives. So what the convention is trying to share with the world is that persons with disabilities do not need, or that persons that require accessibility to one point, do not need other people's pity, right? Or help. They need to have the same adjustments, or the needed adjustments to do whatever other people are doing in full liberty, right? So I think that changes. So and I've said it many times, and people try to say, hey, I'm going to help you. No, well, do I need your help, right? Perhaps if there was a ramp, I don't need your help. Perhaps if I could sense with my fingers where the bathroom is, I wouldn't have to ask you, right? Of course, you're part of a community, and that doesn't mean you're a bad person, but the only thing that we're looking for is that mindset. And I would ask everyone here, if you're a supervisor, when was the last time you hired a person with disabilities? 20% of Canadians have a disability, and all of us will have a disability, and sometimes in our lifetime. And do we recognize that? Do our payrolls have 20% of people with disabilities in them? Are we inclusive or not? This is the inclusion project. Do the places where we work, are they really inclusive or not? That's a question. Are you inclusive or not? Right? It's not if you're a good person or a bad person, is if do you put the effort to really be inclusive?
Mhm.
Because when you don't have the disability, you don't see it, then you don't live it, and then going about your day is just as easy, but try doing it in a wheelchair, try doing it you know, without seeing or without hearing, right? So that's just my point of view on
That's a really, really good grounding. And what I hear from you there too is, just that importance. I think we're trying to be very deliberate about reframing this, because I think often, and in doing this work as well, as an organization, often it's easy to think of accessibility as a good thing, like a immoral thing, something that makes us feel, more moral and more upstanding. And what we're hearing is no, it's just a basic right. It's just basic respect and acknowledgement and visibility on people who have these needs.
Yes, I would say, and you said a visibility. And just to be frank, my uh, I took care of disability rights program in Mexico, and of course, it's very different because Mexico physically is not accessible. So that's the
Mm,
beginning of it, right? And then you have the mental part and the emotional part. But when I came to Vancouver, I was looking for persons with disabilities, for programs, for nonprofits, and as I got close to them, I didn't see a lot of persons with disabilities in the workforce, to be honest. And
mm,
when I asked, I was told that this is because they have, benefits. And if they work overtime more than certain time, they lose those benefits. So
mm,
are we really being accessible in every way, financially, economically, with persons with disabilities, taking their benefits if they really work, are part of the workforce? So that's another issue that NGOs that are related to disability and accessibility have brought up, right?
mhm, mhm, mhm,
If we have more persons with disabilities, then you can see the need for accessibility. Then it's an everyday um, um, that's part of our everyday, right? Oh yeah,
mhm,
yeah, we have a colleague that is a blind person, and that's easy. We have the software, IT comes, then can read the screen, right? Or somebody knows sign language, or we have it on Zoom, right?
mhm.
But do we really take care of that, or are we just amending it when it comes?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really, really point of challenge there. And I'm really glad that we have people in the room today who are in decision-making positions and who are employers themselves. And yeah, this is a really, really good reflection point. I'm really tempted to ask you about your personal and or professional journey that led you to this work, if that's something you're comfortable sharing.
Sure, of
Oh,
course,
please
of
go
course.
ahead.
Well, I was as Mexico proposed this and that to the world, the UN asked the National Human Rights Commission to be the monitor of the application of this. And that's where inclusion comes, because inclusion of the Convention for the Rights for Persons with Disabilities doesn't mean, hey, let's go throughout the country and see if everybody has a ramp,
Mm,
right? Like,
mm,
no, it means legal inclusion. It means
mm,
looking into your own policies, the policies, and I lead the accessibility program within Mosaic. And yeah, we revise our policies to see if we're accessible. We work with the operations team also to see if all our sites are operational.
mm, mm,
So, and this can go from small to big. You can go to your council, you can go to your city, you can go to everywhere. But once again, being accessible is not only being able to go into that community center pool with
mhm,
and having a ramp, right?
mhm,
Is do we have events where everybody can be there comfortably, right? do we have, do we work with persons with disabilities on a constant basis, right? Right. So that's what makes it, with children. Do children know what the rights are of persons with youth? Children doesn't distinguish. They're learned. That's a learned, just like racism, right? That's learned. Children can play with other children with disabilities, and that's the true inclusion. Everybody in the room doing their own thing freely, right? So, are we doing that or not?
Thank you for
And then coming from that experience to Canada, yes, I see that because of the Disability Act, uh, buildings have to be accessible. But then are people accessible in Canada? Are people accessible in Vancouver, right? Are you patient with a person with disabilities that is serving you? I've seen that sometimes in coffee shops where the person serving you has a disability, and the customer just gets uh, annoyed, right? Well, we all disability is just a condition, doesn't determine who you are.
Absolutely, absolutely. No, thank you so much for that. And just on the heels of that, I was wondering what some common misconceptions you've seen, and I think you touched on it already, but let's see if we can dwell on it a bit more. What common misconceptions you've seen about accessibility, especially as it relates to community and workplace settings?
I think there's two things. People want to connect with accessibility and what it means, but they're also fearful of being rude or being politically incorrect when addressing accessibility, right? So I think I would say just speak to your heart, right? And there's just basic etiquette also, like if there's a person in a wheelchair, usually you bend down a little so you can talk eye to eye to that person as in respect, right? Very common with blind persons not to say, hey, I'm going to take you, and you just grab them by the arm and I'll be your guide. No, may I be your guide? This is my arm. Just those basic things, and you can make in your workplace a one pager of etiquette or how to address what's the most respectful way. So people also say, oh, well, this happened to me. And as you open it, and I said, it's okay to be wrong. It's okay to not use the politically correct way to address a person, right? But the important thing is you want to address it. You want to learn the correct way. You want to be more inclusive, right? And you put that effort into it. And we've seen that all around in Mosaic. And I would think I would just say we're not there. I don't believe we're fully accessible, right? But you should be your own supervisor of how accessible you are on a permanent basis. Hey, we can't fix that door today, but maybe tomorrow. Hey, we do have a software. Hey, what are our HR policies on hiring? Are we really inclusive or not? Right? These kinds of things have to come up, and if you address them step by step, because sometimes the barrier that people see is financial. No, we don't have the money for that. We can't be. But what if you had the disability? Do you wait to have the money to go on with your life? No, right? And I've seen that in different realities. A person in Mexico City with a disability, they have to get on the subway and then on a bus and do whatever they can, right? I had part of my team, I had a blind lawyer. He had to do his own events, do the whole thing by himself. And because my team, I had 6 people with disabilities, 2 blind lawyers, a person in a wheelchair, another person with acute rheumatoid arthritis. And I told them, you have to show persons with disabilities that you can do the same and better.
Right.
Right. And they did. They did. But it shouldn't be this constant battle. It just should be business as usual with and without persons with disabilities, right?
Yeah.
And that's where our mindset comes in.
Absolutely. And for those who may be interacting with people with I guess more visible disabilities, that freedom to have the four parts, but also to be willing to learn and to adjust and to adapt as we go, that in itself is empowering, I would say. That in itself is it's freedom that is truly freeing. So thank you very much for shedding light on that. And you talked about Mosaic and some of the work that you're already doing there, and how much and how there is still some grounds to cover, and that seems to be something that we heard across the board today too, with the poll that the responses we got earlier. Even when organizations are prioritizing it, it seems that there still is always the distance to go in meeting a certain mark, or where possible surpassing that mark. But how can organizations do this in such a way that is not just compliance based? It's not just about checklist, checking the box, and it's not just about metrics, to actually keep creating and curating spaces that are truly accessible and inclusive.
Say first, lose the fear of being politically incorrect, right? Because that's common. It's common when we try to engage. I've seen it with First Nations, right? People don't want to say the wrong thing. No, no, no. Create a safe environment where you can talk about this. And this is where our Center for Diversity comes. If you have a question, come to the Center of Diversity at Mosaic. We can guide you. That's the first one. Lose that. Then persons with disabilities are persons. That's it, just like you and me. And you can connect at the level that you are willing to connect. But don't do it out of pity. Do it because you're interested in connecting with another person. That's it. And being accessible or creating an accessible workplace does not make you a better person morally. It makes you a more inclusive organization and a more inclusive person, which at the end probably makes you a better member of your community, but it's not because, I mean, you shouldn't get a prize for it. That's what we should do generally, right? We should all be accessible, because if 20% of the population has a disability or will have a disability, then it's our obligation to recognize those members, right? We recognize children because they're part of our everyday life and they go to school. We recognize seniors because they were here before us, they're our parents. But do we recognize persons with disabilities when we don't have a family member or a colleague that has a disability, right? Are they on our minds all the time? Maybe they should be on our minds all the time, right? Every time you have a conversation, oh, you're going to hire with a person with disabilities. Oh, are we going to have a new venue? Yes. Is it accessible, right? And making that extra time to check all those parts, I think is the best way you can go. And we have a very simple program, like any other nonprofit. We're also very tight on money, but our accessibility program, all the directors are involved. We discuss it at an executive level, and then we say, hey, we can do this year. We can do this next year. We can, I'll give you a simple example where a client with disability can come. We spoke to the company that brings them and say, hey, and we talk to the strata where they can really park, right? If you don't think of these things, then you just leave the person or the client on his own, however they can. But you can make their life easier, and you can give a better service just connecting with the service provider and taking that extra time. And that doesn't take money. It just takes time. Right?
And going the distance. Thank you very much for making that quite practical there. And then I wonder the role of intersectionality in advancing accessibility, particularly for people who experience multiple overlapping forms of marginalization.
Yes, and I think this is gender and race play a huge part, right? I'll go into my own background. There's huge stigma in Mexico for persons with disabilities, right? So hiding that person in your family or in your workplace, or not addressing and ignoring that's huge. And At Mosaic, what we do is we serve newcomers.
Mhm.
So newcomers, I think it's harder for permanent residents because legally Canada won't allow, in general, persons with disabilities to come in. But with refugees, the threshold is much lower, right? And we usually are receiving persons that come from war-torn countries, right? That also have that cultural baggage and that race and gender that come into play. So we have to be very alert of what that background is to be able to serve them better and to meet them where they are, right? Because if you have a multi-barriered client or member of your community, you can't just tell them, oh, Canada's inclusive and welcome and you're here. No, you have to know where they are mentally and emotionally to actually be inclusive. And then you have to be culturally sensitive to what their necessities and how they were treated as a person with disability or with needs of accessibility in their own country, right?
Right.
Go from there and then say, hey, there's another reality here. But to be frank, the Canadian reality is not free of stigma either, right? So we also have to acknowledge that and share that with our clients and be with them all the way, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. That was very well put. And then what are the consequences, social, economic, or in other ramifications here, where when accessibility is not treated as a human right, what kinds of outcomes can we expect?
I think that what we what we see is then we create a bubble where persons with disabilities are just in that bubble, right? And they're
Right.
not an active part of society. So then it's a little bit like immigrants right now. Oh, they take our jobs. Really? Are people cherry picking here?
Mm-hmm.
Do we have an excess of caregivers?
Mm-hmm.
Do we have an excess of construction workers? Right? So we have and by the way, they're very, I mean, persons with disabilities can be an active part of the workforce if they have that opportunity, just like anyone else, right? I'll give you an example. I'll go back to Mexico. So there was this huge insurance company that would only hire or would have preference for persons with Down syndrome to do the invoicing because they were so focused and they had this special program and they go, no, no, no. They're always on time,
Mm-hmm.
so efficient. Our turnover
Precise.
turnover went down, right? We also had contact with Microsoft, and they prefer persons with autism to find glitches in programming, right? And coding, because they can abstract to a degree that other people cannot to see that find, oh, this program has it. So we should recognize those as abilities, right? And then we should also advocate for, hey, if they have benefits, they should keep those benefits, but they should be able to work full time. We have staff that somebody say, hey, I have a disability, can you give me less hours? I'm like, what? You want to work less hours in nonprofit? Yeah, because or else I mean, yeah, we're already stretched in
Chopped,
nonprofit and you
yeah.
want to work less. So it took me some time to understand and goes, yes, because I'm gonna lose my disability benefit,
Mm,
right?
mm,
And life is already hard enough
mm-hmm,
when you need to make all those adjustments in your everyday
mm-hmm,
life because they're
mm-hmm,
not made in society or in your community.
mm-hmm,
They should keep those benefits and be able to work full time, right?
mm-hmm,
So
mm-hmm.
that's something that we're all advocating for, and I think it does come through because it's huge.
Yeah, I really like how you frame that. It's a very strength-based approach. It's one that does not, I mean, I think it's the kind of model where people then have the opportunity to be the very best of who they are, whether it's things they've already discovered or things they can discover as they go, and also accommodate for some of the areas where they have maybe more needs, if you may, bigger needs than others who don't have those kinds of, disabilities. I like the example you gave too around abilities, and how we just need to change our orientation and understanding of what, of where people fit, because there is a place for everyone. I thank you. Thank you very much for that. Now, in your opinion, what does it look like to embed accessibility into leadership in policy making, especially given the background that you have, or program design from the outset?
I think, again, you have to make it part of your everyday, right? So, if we have a meeting, just ask, hey, are there going to be persons with disabilities in the room? Are we accessible? Are we ready to receive? Do you know which disability, right? Do our job postings, our jobs postings, they include that we're inclusive, that we can make accommodations, right? Does our staff know? I think this is very common because those of us that do not have a visible disability sometimes are shy of sharing it in our workplace. And guess what? We have a legal responsibility to accommodate you, right? So you can go and you don't have to disclose it. You can go directly to your HR and they would have to make that accommodation, and you only have to share what your needs are and have, a specialist say what you need, and nobody in your workplace has to know that. But if you want, which is a very brave thing to do, I don't think, if you do want to share it, it's also a lesson to other people, right? Of what we usually do not see or do not want to share, and it's in our everyday life.
Right. Sorry, were you going to say anything more there?
No, and I think leaders have that responsibility. You as a supervisor, as a leader, you have to make that part of your everyday. Just like EDI, we see EDI being threatened every day right now, right? Well, then just we don't have to fight it. You just have to live it, right? And that's the best way to fight it.
You don't have to fight it, you just have to live it. That's something that I'm going to sit with after this conversation today. Ron has a question in the chat, and I invite you all, please do, as we're now looking at winding down the time here. How might we ensure that inclusion strategies are culturally sensitive while still being universally accessible? Thanks for that question, Ron.
So Ron, I would encourage you to read the Convention for Persons with Disabilities. Usually these documents are so general that they apply to every country, and that's why every country and every community can embrace them. And they're written in very simple language so we can all understand and embrace them. But at the same time, I would say you can make your own parameters, right? In your workplace, in your home, in your community, say, hey, I'm a volunteer in the community center. Do we need a ramp? Yes, can we afford it? No. Can we make one? Right? Can we get some people to donate to concrete and make one over here? Can we? Who knows sign language? Who? Can one of our Google, what do you call them? Those donations that come in. Can one of our fundraising be for, signs in Braille? I'll give you an example. We discovered that our signs in Braille, after we had a colleague that was blind, and she goes, your signs in Braille and Mosaic are written in different kinds of Braille. One is shorthand and one is longhand, and it doesn't make sense for persons that are blind. Of course, we didn't know because we can't read it, right? But this is simple. You can connect with groups that for free can visit your community can sit down with you and say, hey, this is what we go through every day. Yes, I can make an assessment, right? Websites. Is your website inclusive, right? Do you know what that means? Can a person with a mental disability browse your website and understand where to go and what to push, right? So simple things that can make it more easier for everyone. And again, it doesn't make us better people. It makes us more inclusive people and a better community. It's our obligation. And I would have these conversations in Mexico with persons with disabilities. Say, hey, do you recognize that you also have the obligation to vote, to have a family, to pay taxes, to have a job, to contribute to your community as a person with disabilities? And they were like, whoa, I thought I just needed subsidies. No, you have to do all that, but you have to have the necessary accommodations to do it on the same way of than any other person. It's the same with and this is not that immigrants have a disability, but it's the same with immigrants. Oh yeah, when they come, they have the same rights as Canadians. Yes, but do they have the same access to those rights? Do you have the language barriers, right? Migrant workers, they don't need to speak English. They're not here for the PR. They're here for temporary work. Then why do they have not access to public services in their own language, right? If you want people from other countries to work in your country and then leave, you have to give them access to the services in their language because they don't have a legal obligation to stay nor speak English, right?
Yeah, I want to say it's these subtle things, but the more you hear about it, you realize it's actually not so subtle. These are real issues that, that face us on a day-to-day basis. We may choose to look away or we may choose to pretend it's not there, but these are issues with real import and ramifications. A question from Anmol here. How do we educate people to overcome ableism?
So I think you just have to be real, right? Again, this notion that I'm so inclusive because I do all these things for a person with disability. Like I tell my staff, we're not great just because we're mosaic and we help newcomers, right? This is our job and we have to do it correctly and to the best of our ability. It doesn't make me a hero to be part of mosaic. How I do it, that's another question, right? That's a personal question, but I think we have to show, and this is where children are the most important part, right? If you teach children not to distinguish, they won't distinguish, right? But if you tell your child, hey, don't play with that other kid, seems like he has something, you might not want to go there. Why? Hey, why don't you go and play with him and see how you can really connect with him? A child will do that easily. And we as adults should do that easily, but we have so much baggage that we don't take the risk, right? And it shouldn't be a risk. It should be just a connection.
It should be just life. It should be just life. Thank you for that. And then the final question here, what strategies or frameworks can help organizations conduct meaningful accessibility audits or assessments?
I firmly believe, and was from my experience in Mexico, that accessibility has to be on the table at the highest level, from the CEO to the executives, because or else it doesn't trickle down. And I would tell this to governors and mayors. If the mayor and the CEO doesn't take this as a crucial part of who the agency is, then it won't trickle down.
Right.
Because there's always so many things that are immediate and important and fundamental that don't leave time for what's an emergency, doesn't leave time for what's essential sometimes. and being inclusive and accessible is essential. So you have to make it part of your everyday conversation. You have to make it part of your executive team has to have a leader,
Mm,
and that leader has to connect with, of course, the physical part, which would be operations, but with the mental part, which would be HR.
mhm,
And
mhm,
those have to talk to each other, and there has to be a quarterback that says, this is going to be on the agenda all the time. And it doesn't have to be a 3 hour thing, right? It's just like, oh, hey, everyone, we have an accessibility report every 3 months. What have you done? What are your needs? And bring it at exit. And we do that. Hey,
mhm,
could we fix the door at Highgate? Yeah, this year we could. Last year we couldn't. We weren't fully accessible. Is our family center fully accessible? No, that's why we have clients on the first floor
mm.
instead of the second floor. Can we fix that right now? No. Can we find another place? Yes. So practical solutions, right? And
Right.
and I come from a developing country. You can see people do wonders without money
Mm,
to get by.
mm,
It is possible. It
mhm,
is possible to be accessible without money. I don't think we should stop advocating for the money, but I don't think it has to be the center of being accessible in many ways.
mm. Hmm. Thank you, thank you. That's such a beautiful way to pack this all in. I think on the framework front, as many in the room today would know, so we have this A Ready Plus process, and this is work that we've done yeah, at the early stages of the establishment of the Diversity Institute. We were able to support Mosaic through that process of developing some strategies and framework around this. But one of the areas that we look at, because ours is accessibility, racial equity, diversity, and inclusion. And the plus there is intersectionality, understanding that there are things, socioeconomic factors, religious backgrounds, and things like that, that, often get lost within the cracks. And for us, part of what we're trying to do as well is shifting from a metric based orientation around the framework that we've developed around the things that we're looking for. And I think what you've brought today is a very, very qualitative, very, very tangible lens on that, where we're not just talking about, yes, we need to increase our quotas and then what falling into the trap of tokenization and things like that. I think you made it really practical today. I think you talked about the pitfalls, the challenges that we could run into if we continue to pretend that these don't exist, as well as some of the areas where existing policies can get better. And you made it so real too, in terms of just don't be afraid to make mistakes. Don't be afraid. Just believe in your heart that if you show up right, that the people you're showing up to will rise up with you as well. I think that's really, really empowering. Thank you very much for that, Hugo. This has been thoroughly insightful. I just wish we had more time, but we'll make do with what we have. Thank you again for sharing your time with us today.
Thank you, Ruth. Thank you, everyone.
Mhm. And yeah, as we close, I'm just going to end on a note of gratitude once again. Thank you all very much for joining us for today's webinar. It's always a pleasure when we get together on a monthly basis to talk about issues, things that are topical within your organization in your daily interactions. We hope you'll mark your calendar and register by Eventbrite if you haven't already done so to join us for the next webinar. Another one that I'm very excited about will be joined by Rachel Teller. Rachel is the CEO, the Executive Director of the Indigenous Perspectives Society, and we'll be talking about decolonizing systems and structures on May 20th. Recordings of this and upcoming sessions will be available, of course, on our website. Again, thank you all very much for joining us today, and very special thank you, Hugo, for making this truly meaningful.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a good one.
You too.